Path of Exile's Necropolis is upon us, and I'm somewhat hyped for it. However, as a relatively new player, I'm also a little scared. So yeah, let's talk about it. One of the things I try to hold on to when I play Path of Exile as a new player, trying to understand everything, is setting goals. Given that PoE can be opaque at best and confusing for new players, I believe that setting clear goals is the best way to enjoy discovering the game. For me, it started with finishing the campaign, right? That was like one of the first goals I set to myself. Then completing all the maps, trying out all the seasonal mechanics, and finally defeating as many bosses as I could, which I recently somewhat completed if you don't take into account any of the Uber bosses, right? When I was live streaming the reveal of Necropolis last Friday, I was looking for goals, and I think I've found some. I'll start with what I'm most excited about, and we can go from there. I've spent a lot of time understanding how maps function and the plethora of ways a players can modify and customize maps. Completing all the maps is, in my mind, a simple, straightforward way to set goals in PoE. I know exactly what to do, so the idea of an additional rank of difficulty through tier 17 maps is amazing. It's something to work towards, and that feels good. It's another straightforward objective for me. On top of this, I've really enjoyed bossing in PoE, as I've mentioned. Their unique mechanics have really drawn me to the challenges they present. And although GGG have said that tier 17 bosses aren't new to the game, they're reused assets in a way, they will probably be new to me. And they'll give me something else to look forward to, and a reason for all the new players to seek them out. You know, when I think about my first steps in the endgame, I remember sextants being another layer of complexity that felt somewhat too much for my monkey brain to comprehend. In Necropolis, sextants have been removed, and they've added many different scarabs to fill that gap. To me, although it might not make the game simpler per se, it will probably save some time on busy work, which I'm all for. It's a streamlining process that tells me I should try to focus on gathering scarabs in the endgame, another clear goal for my next playthrough. That's what I got from the livestream anyway. It's also an opportunity for me to delve deeper into what makes scarabs so useful for targeting specific map events. In my last playthrough, I didn't really focus that much on scarabs, so yeah, I'm looking forward to that. Now, I know some people only see damage numbers and spreadsheets when they think of Path of Exile, but for me, the vibe of the game is as important as its mechanics. Necropolis brings my favorite themes to the game. I love the idea of becoming a gravedigger, burying bodies in a cemetery, and the new NPC, the Undertaker Arimor, I think his name is, he brings an undead flavor to the game that I'm all about. It's kind of grotesque and noir and just, yeah, I like it. I also like to point out that the music in the trailer by Michael James Collier is incredibly good, right? Please inject it straight into my veins. Thank you very much. On top of this, one of the biggest changes coming with Necropolis is the mechanics surrounding the Lantern of Arimor, the guy we just spoke about. I'm sure you already know all about it, but in essence, when you change zones, you get to peer into what enemies are in the next zone and see what modifiers are applied to them. Also, you can move those modifiers around to better suit your playstyle. But it's not only buffs to the mobs, there are also what I call positive modifiers, such as increased XP and quantity of items dropped. This sounds like a fun mechanic to me, nothing egregious there really, although I wonder how longtime players will feel about this mechanic, right? Considering that it will probably slow down a lot of the gameplay when you're trying to jump quickly between zones. Well, I guess you could just ignore it and blast through, and I'm sure there's another way to skip that screen, but still, yeah, what do you guys think? Now, I want to talk about crafting for a second. This is the toughest one for me. I've been told by many people that you can spend thousands of hours in Path of Exile without truly understanding the depth of crafting possibilities, and that makes sense to me. After my first 100 hours of the game, I've spent some time trying to understand crafting, I can now say that the very basics of crafting aren't really that complicated once you actively sit down with it and learn, the basics of modifying your items, prefixes, suffixes, that kind of stuff. Crafting items and, in a way, gambling with the modifiers can be fun, especially in the early game where you're getting through the campaign and you've got a lot of items to play around with and not many resources and currencies, which is something I struggled with in the later game where I'm just inundated by currencies. But just like everything in Path of Exile, the iceberg that is crafting hides a deep, deep wealth of features under the surface. With Necropolis coming up, I've heard the term Crafting League being thrown around our Discord server quite a bit, and I think I know why. Necropolis adds new ways to craft all sorts of things, and as a guy who's been trying to catch up on 10 plus leagues of crafting modifications and mechanics, I'm tired, boss. The idea of crafting souls together to create items does sound appealing, but I can't help but wonder if I'm just a little too late to the game to catch up in time for this release. Let me know what you guys think in the comments. What do you guys think I should do? When it comes to the GGG live event itself, this was my first time covering one of these events on Twitch.
Hi, I'm Chris Wilson from Grinding Gear Games.
And I have to say that I was somewhat taken aback by the nonchalant nature of the conversation with the developers. The idea that a content creator would lead the interview was really unique, and I loved every second of it. There was something really grounded about the discussion. It didn't necessarily feel like we were peering into a serious business update in the GGG offices with, 50,000 people on Twitch, but more like a really chill conversation in a pub with a pint and a packet of crisps. Just talking about upcoming changes and why they were exciting, right? And I think that's part of what makes the success of Path of Exile so clear to me. They understand the importance of communicating the why of their work. And regardless of whether you agree with them or not on the decisions they make for the game, I couldn't help but feel like they knew what they were about. Especially Mark, who very clearly spends most of his free time playing Path of Exile, and as a result, has very strong feelings about his vision for the game. You know how sometimes it can feel like the players who live and breathe a video game understand the game better than its creators? I'm thinking mostly about like World of Warcraft in its darkest times, or even Diablo 4 at its worst. No hate to the devs, of course, but goddamn, that feeling didn't come across during the GGG livestream to me. There's a sense of brash confidence emanating from that team that got me excited for the future of PoE and its successor, Path of Exile 2. Speaking of which, we found out that they have pushed the game back quite a bit, and although some game companies could have been crucified for this, or would have been crucified for this, I was pleasantly surprised by the amount of support the PoE team got in the comments of their livestream. Again, there is no doubt that GGG knows what they are about, and so the delay doesn't come off as incompetency, but rather as the knowledge of when to take more time to make a better game, which I'm all for, of course. Anyway, yeah, those are my thoughts on Necropolis. Overall, I am hyped because the community around me is going crazy with the excitement, which makes me look forward to diving into the game once again on Friday. As usual, give some love to the devs of the industry, and I'll see you on Twitch on launch day, Friday the 29th. As usual, thank you so much for hanging out, and we'll see you in the next one.